Brave New World digitized safe space crickets. That was a bunch of redundant statement, wasn't it? The safe space is crickets. Digitized is crickets. So that you didn't act correctly to do something that was required of you because someone came to oppress you and you decided not to act in defense of yourself. For the past cast is BTWRLM188. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Interesting week we've had. We'll start off here about our digitized world and Silent Weapons Quiet Wars, what I talk about all the time. A little document you could read. It's on the bottom of the blogcaster every week. And it has electronics spin to it to explain certain things as I reduce it to you, to just kind of, as I read it on the broadcast, some of it. It was, there has been a system of systems that's put things in place for you to plug yourself into their circuit. And they'll induce you to plug yourself in, and you will. And I get over to the Protocols of the Elders of Zion to show you, look at that as a manual of your frailty. Don't look at it as a politicized, whatever. I don't even know. Sometimes I don't have the words for all this nonsense. I try to use everything as a tool to work, to go after what we need to do. And again, just as I was asking you before the election, regardless if we call it a selection or a non-vote or a franchise or the electors and all that stuff, there's a reality. Boots on the ground are going to be on the ground whether they're yours or not, and someone's going to be doing something. And so I told you before, we got to look at the reality of things. I may not like a lot of it, but it's the battlefield and we have to deal with it. So one thing comes up in this digital world. They want to digitize us and they want to create us into these entities that computers can keep track of, and the technocrats dreamland, utopia that they think is going to happen. And it's going to happen if we don't really step up and we don't extract ourselves. To show you how easy it's going to be for your digital life to be excised. And this is, understand the way this works is that this wasn't the people in command of the digital world, the big data actually making a decision. It actually went against those that make the decision, and it was so-called a glitch. They call it a glitch. This is your life's going to be subject to the glitch. And if you look at how this all works, you realize that a glitch can happen from any place in a digital fairyland. It could be a false flag. It could be a self-inflicted wound. It can be someone making an attack. It could be a neutron coming from cosmic rays, blasting your chip memory to interfere with some memory hole. And you're off the line. And here's the proof for those of you that don't want to really pay into this, pay attention to this, and really start to purposefully advocate about the dangers of this and working things out. And as you all know, I don't, and maybe to a great detriment, I see people that I've listened to their broadcasts. I can't even imagine people listening to their stuff, and they have hundreds and hundreds of people listening to them, and then I find out they pay Facebook. So I must be missing a big tool for advertisement if I was looking at that to get more listeners. But Facebook, I am not on it. I decided I would not get on it. I'm reluctantly on lots of other things, a couple of other things, not lots, a couple, and looking for alternatives there. This is not, to me, it's not really a joke. It's not I'm as low-key as I can be and still be functional. But the more important thing, and maybe before long, again, most of the people that listen to me are as old, getting as old as I am or older, and so we have a shorter time to consider this and be considerate of it. Anyway, Facebook fixes glitch that killed users, and I just focused on that part, killed users. Well, how about you killed the person? The user is nothing more than a fiction, no different than your fictional person, your legal person in law that attaches benefits and civil obligations and duties to you, that you did on your own as a man or woman to bring yourself into the status and acceptance of the obligations and duties of a civilized person, not a man or a woman, but someone in a society. Then what they did is they translated the society that they were in into a corporate structure that was even more corporate than corporate, Again, the people being a body is a fiction, but it in fact is a people of men and women in an aggregate. The body of which is the fiction, the independent, the non-dependent people within it are not. And so like I've always said, I'm not worried about the what a corporation is. It's simply an aggregate. It's what really this thing is purposeful to do. That Facebook shows us, if you're registered with a system, that they can literally kill or have killed their own society, their own people. Corporations are people too. You see how this works. They kill their users. Just a parasite there as well. Remember, they're the host, you're the client. Client is another word for parasite in this case. So we don't even know what we're plugging ourselves into, but it's right there for us to see if we see it, that Facebook had a glitch that killed users. Can you imagine that if your rights, if your regulations, if your fines, if you feed your bank account, if all your stuff is tied to this user, and you have to function through that, there's no way that men and women can function without this connection, that a glitch can kill you is proven right here. Facebook fixes the glitch that killed users. Facebook says a glitch that was killing off its users was fixed. And this is what you find in the technocratic society, where everything has to be by the way the bureaucrat says it has to be. You don't have your papers, you don't get service. You don't have your numbers, you don't have an account you can refer to, you don't get health care, you don't get to drive, as it's so called. You don't get to vote. You don't get anything. You are now a man without a nation. You're a woman without a nation. Right there instantaneously. If you put Facebook as a nation and a society of its users, it was killing them off without due process as well. Is your technocratic future? Is the problems I see like with Bitcoin? It's the problems of trying to digitize some of these things that we use. Men and women, real, flesh and blood, breathing men and women require a different style of existence to exist together, and digitization's not going to do that. For as much as the technology is a tool of wonder and great good, it is not being wielded in any kind of authoritative sense by people who think good. So Facebook says it fixed the glitch. Several profiles, including the boss, Mark Zuckerberg, were changed to a memorial page. Now, I'm not going to say more. So my point is, in a flick of a switch, in a glitch of a neutron, here we are. Your whole life is subjected to change, and if you're not the one in the seat of decision, like the boss who got affected, to even see the problem, you think they care about you? You think you can change it? This is your technocratic future as we move forward through these days. Where you are not really paying attention to what I'm saying behind the woodshed, and maybe some other places that are talking to you about this fictional world that you live. And we kind of identify it as legal, but as I told you, legal and lawful are kind of parallel. So there's really not, in some regard, I don't make a lot of big hay about these things. It's just, again, I look at them all as jurisdictional terms. And so that said, I don't make a big deal. I just say, okay, what jurisdiction am I in? How, in my research, am I, and I'm talking for myself, how am I going to address this? If there's a remedy. I mean, it's like we're getting to the point where I'm trying to show you. I'm trying to show you that there may not be one because of the very same thing that the glitch. There's a glitch in the matrix. Remember, that proved you were in a matrix. You weren't in your own life. Even if you didn't have the outward understanding, little glitches that you see around you are telling you there's something quite wrong, and you're not really paying attention to that. Those that understand that are paying attention to it, and then you still find out that you're there. You see the glitch, you know the matrix is there around you, but you realize you're subject to its control until you can figure out a way to change that. And some of that is to unplug and go to the life of austerity, as you saw in the Matrix, the movie, which is not a movie. You're living in, you clothe yourselves in tattered rags and you eat gruel in the sewer, and the centurion's always after you, coming to get to and they don't care to kill you. They'll kill you first before anything anymore. It's all you see playing out. That your digital world can suffer a glitch. Even the boss can suffer the glitch. And you can be looking like anything else as well. You see the problem here, I hope, I won't belabor it anymore. I just can't tell you enough how the digital world is your accepted. You're using the digital world gets you, and really more than you, the people behind you, your posterity coming up, that they're going to be indoctrinated into these situations where glitches, whether real or fictional, will interfere with your ability to function. And we're agreeing with it at every step. And this fiction that gets created, these people, these bureaucrats, these, as I was saying, reflexive law, which is a really kind of it's not even an oxymoron, because law is not reflexive either. It's not even an antagonism. It's just not even existent. It's something that's made up. This reflexive environmental condition will invent the environment around you that it needs to control everything. And this is where we were starting to talk. I told you be careful. This animal rights condition is another NGO bringing on the neutrality of all, and bringing equal, the biodiversity aspect of all animals being equal. This is all ultimately tied together. That this story came up, and I didn't find it I didn't find it at all surprising from where it originates. That we had this little story telegraphed before that I talked about, that now comes to fruition in Argentina. And why did I say that it does not surprise? I'll just bring it out. Where's the Pope from? But Argentina. I don't find that to be just an unmeaning coincidence that in Argentina a judge orders a chimp to be set free because animals have rights. And what is a human but an animal? And you're seeing now the international determinations being made to give monkeys rights, and they called it in this title non-human rights. But that's not actually accurate, because they're actually talking about animals. And so it couldn't be non-human. Human's an animal. Animal rights would have been a better statement. And then tying humans to that. They called this non-human rights, when in fact it may be non-human, but the human is an animal. If you doubt me, just go to the United States Code, and I don't remember all of them, but I think it's Title 21, I think it's Title 17 or 7. You'll find as I've said before, man is considered a pest animal. And this is all written before us, folks, in time. We, men and women, are considered a pest animal. And pests actually have more rights than man as a pest animal, and the pest that they consider man is to be considered as a pest against the natural environment. It's already in the United States Code that a judge in Argentina has ruled that a chimpanzee at the Mendoza Zoo must be freed, as animals have rights too. Now, when this finally comes from the south and moves into the more developed third world banana republics that we're finding, as I told you, we can identify who we are even in the United States. Animals have rights too. This chimpanzee is going to be given an EBT card. It's going to be given health care. It's going to be able to order whatever it wants, because it has rights that everyone else has. And I don't doubt that it's going to be making demands at the bar, and you're going to watch it stumbling down as a homeless chimp, having the right to be a homeless chimp and interfering with your life. Why? Because it's a stakeholder now, because it can affect you, and it has equal rights to you. So if it has equal rights, then what's the limitation on voting? And I guess I'm doing a backdoor entry. Excuse me for if that was insulting to anybody, but I'm doing a backside entry. See, we can't do any of that. But at any rate, I'm trying to show you that this is the defeat, even of the last little weapon that people had to denounce a condition they saw more evil than what they had to accept in not accepting the one that won in this United States election. You're seeing the animals have rights. Rocks have more rights too, folks. It's coming. Biodiversity is on you internationally through Argentina. That when you start seeing animals having rights, you're watching you is considered a human, because you didn't stand up as a man to defend your own status against this imposition. You will be treated equal, and all the animals in the zoo will be treated equally. You are going to get the same rights as the chimpanzee, essentially. This is the same condition where they bring you down. It's like I was pointing out to you before, your civil rights are these rights that gave you to pay exactions of every kind. to pay fines, fees, punishments and penalties, folks. That's your civil rights. Where do we go? How many times have I repeated that? Title 42, United States Code, Title 42, Section 1981. And you look very carefully, the freed people and the person's legal status that gave those rights are equal to the white citizens. So the white citizen, so-called, was never above exactions of every kind in these United States, so-called, at least since the overthrow that Lincoln caused. So we go right back into that. It kind of eventuates itself out. Now we go international, that rocks have more rights in the Biodiversity Treaty, more rights than you, and then animal rights are what's going to rule at an equal level. They brought the freed people of the time that they freed. The black people were free, folks, at the time, and then they were subsumed back in and accepted the servitudes that were imposed upon the whites. And this wasn't the white controllers. This is the ones that were being used to develop the country, that we all thought was something greater. Remember, we started this nation as a political, in other words, commercial servitude. You find the evidence of that right in Article 6 of the Constitution, and it says that this Constitution is going to suffer and be obligated to the prior debts and engagements. So if you don't understand what those engagements were in the treaties coming in, and you don't understand the engagements were a debt, and you don't understand that a debt means you can't be a sovereign, you missed it. I missed it until I found it, and then I realized what we're in. But that's a reality. That's why everyone can complain, and they can complain about all this stuff, but they won't ever see it. They'll just be the guy that sounds like they're the right one complaining. As I just heard right before my broadcast, two people that most people respect, I found dopey. They both agreed to counter opposing views, those counter opposing views would be the answer. I don't think that anybody picked it up. I don't know. Maybe you did. I don't see much going on reflection of this stuff. Maybe this is just noise going past us. Maybe I'm just noise going past you. I'm suggesting to you the plan's out there. They're showing us how it works. I've explained this, and we have evidence in the news. The notice to us, this is what's going down and it's going to happen unless and until we stand up. So we have equal rights. There is now an identity status that starts to develop if you're an animal, all right, that people don't understand is already at play. Monkeys now have rights. They're going to get their EBT cards, folks. They're going to be coming in and ordering their bananas. And what better place than to come from the south, out of Argentina, where the Pope comes out of, folks. And now the black Pope is coming out of Venezuela now. Remember, tie this all together, that the banana republic called the United States is going to be an attractant to these chimpanzees. And you're going to watch the whole land flood with people with animal rights. No real rights, no natural rights. They're just going to be non-human rights. See, in this context, the human's not even man or woman anyway. I mean, they don't view you as a man or woman at all. In fact, like the word rural is a derogatory term. I told you that. We had to come up with a different word when we found that. An urban-rural divide that the urbanites have made up in academia is said that way for a reason. We talked about this, I think, in the chat, in Twitter. It was Portlandia wants to be the kingdom, and it wants to enslave the serfs of the rest of the countryside to serve it. This is in Oregon. You see, this is where the first news of the protests of the election were out of Portland. Again, there's reasons, I think, for all this, and not necessarily to the exclusion of others, but what we're seeing is we're seeing a bunch of, we can identify them by title, and I dislike doing that, and and that's why I lose language at some point to describe, because I believe it's calling them names. When we start calling people names, we miss the point of what they're doing. That may not be them doing it out of their knowledge, but are doing it out of a habit, because they are reducing to their animal level. They're just responding. There is no real thought. There's actually, if you look at what's going on in these riots, there's a motivation for payment. Apparently, allegedly, Soros is committing sedition because he's setting up, as it said, and it probably may not be able to find this guy doing it, to pay for people to act like the animals. And they willingly do for $1 or $2. And see, no different than Facebook. You plug in, they offer it. You plug in, and they can kill you at any moment. Just think about it, if that was lesser into your bank account. your bank account dies. I'm surprised, actually, there hasn't been more of this, but there hasn't, and I think a lot of it gets covered up so they get people to believe it's still safe. Remember, they have to keep your confidence in all this. Here it is, though. Judge in Argentina says chimpanzees have rights. Now you see we have identity politics that now break out like they're superior to all other rights. This is just perceptions, folks. People's perceptions that now have rights. And I think I found what I was telling you before, my sense of the abuse that I see going on, where, again, my experience and my discussion with people that are homosexual, they're gay but not happy, I can tell you that, over a long time ago, and I really haven't looked too much more, was that I would have to say, all of my experience is that they're abused people. They were abused somehow, and the response to it is a sexual response as far as their sexual orientation. It also eventuates itself in a lot of other things. I am not criticizing that. I'm saying this is what my observation is. It's how I look at things. And I find now that because this abuse is now being fostered as a right. And if you don't feel like you are a homosexual, but you don't feel that you're being abused, as I said, have been shocked to find that there hasn't been one person man or woman I've ever talked to that didn't eventually tell me that they were in fact abused. So this is my experiences, my observations. I don't mean to insult anybody, and I don't also intend to soften the problem here. That given that I find most of these people are abused, and it keeps coming out, I found this statement that came through this liberal mindset. It's like almost an insanity of justification came through, and this ties into our identity politics, where you take things and give things rights that superior to everything else without a basis in actual law to do so. You see, this is essentially sustainable development in moving these agendas forward. It does have a source we can find, but I'm not going to go there, at least yet, today. That I'm working at these elections and the people that are responding to elections, and the fact that the governments in the international side and the judiciary. Remember, the judges in Argentina are bar association members as well. In their faction, they're all members of different points. It looks like they're all different, but they eventually all speak to the international bar, which also is the legal advisor to the Pope. Which I don't want to focus on the Pope too much today, but this is also something you'll see the Pope agreeing to as well in his lack of response to certain things. Now, I will again say that this is an abuse. What we hear, this sexual orientation, identity politics, is an abuse that's being foisted on us, and I feel bad for these people, not because of their orientation, but given that my experience is there are abused people. We are being forced to continue that abuse. That I saw this little Twitter come through. We asked trans people who aren't medically transitioning what they want people to know. This was put out as a Twitter. You'll get it in the link in the blogcaster. I won't go to identify all these people. I'm just looking at the surface of this. We asked trans people who aren't medically transitioning what they want people to know. And the big graphic that's in the Twitter is the statement, "We're valid." And I was just taken aback a bit. I didn't know that our sexual orientation was a validity of who we are. Which to me identified an underlying abuse, that someone believes their sexual orientation or any of these orientations validates them. That's the part that saddens me. There's a problem here. It has nothing to do with the outward manifestation and the reaction to some abuse that's been within them. But when someone says some act validates them, my sense immediately tells me we have a hurt person, somebody who's been harmed. And this, and I can go on, I can read the story. It gets pretty vulgar, where they move from here on the link stories to this, which I read a bit and I got tired of hearing it. It just eventuates more and more of a falling of our society. The standards fall from here. That the ultimate statement was that because that I'm a transgender perception, that I'm still valid. Actually, I felt very bad, not for me, for this condition and them. We have a lot of hurt people that are trying to be valid, and they think that that's to eventuate into validity is to be given rights, when in fact, as I told you before, those that are harmed, let me put it this way, those that have been harmed, that are thinking they need to have a certain orientation to be valid, we need to help them if help is possible. That the system uses that to divide us and themselves and continue the abuse. And this is just one instance. I see this type of a problem in lots of other identity-based conditions, which is the imposition that we've been watching over all this time. This led me on to another thing that I was wondering if we analyzed correctly. I asked a question just in the general. It was a question on Twitter. Aren't we using this term incorrectly? The election unleashed a cognitive dissonance cluster bomb. So back to the transgender identity, crying out to say that I'm still valid. In other words, using that as a validity test. I didn't know that this was a validity test. I never understood it that way. But this is not, again, not out of my words. This is coming from people who were questioned on this. My view is that then any promotion of this without fixing the harm aids and abets the abuse. That there's a internal strife building here that cannot be worked out. That would be cognitive dissonance. That this next article about the election unleashed a cognitive dissonance cluster bomb, I thought was an improper use. In other words, looking at what's gone on, and everybody, all the media, which we know was a setup, so that's not even a focus, that they're using now the excuse of cognitive dissonance to explain how all the media was wrong and how this guy Trump got in. I think it's a diminution of the clarity that some of these terms are, even though cognitive dissonance is also kind of a created term as well. And I guess without getting too deep and wallowing into the muck and the mire of this, I realized all of a sudden now what's pouring out of this condition is a new assault coming out. And it's not just because of the people that didn't agree with the outcome. This is an assault across the board that, again, Zero Hedge comes up with this, and I said before, I'm wondering who Zero Hedge is now. And I have an honest question. Is the way they describe this cognitive dissonance, when it isn't somebody believing, well, here's a list. They believe they are smart. Well, no, that's not the list either. That's what the people who they were talking about do. Excuse me. And I don't have that list. Let me go over to the definition of cognitive dissonance and see if I can find that list. That's where I was thinking. That there was a consonant relationship, there's an irrelevant relationship, and then there's a dissonant relationship. In the relationship between cognitions, and the dissonant relationship is defined as two cognitions or actions that are inconsistent with one another. For example, e.g., not wanting to get intoxicated while out, then consuming a large quantity of alcohol. In fact, if I look at these riots and protests, they ostensibly are protesting what they believe. The media ostensibly promoted what they believed. They didn't act counter to what their words were. They actually were consonant with their statements. And so I don't know. So to put this in cognitive dissonance, I found interesting because that's been seeded to us for a long time now, this cognitive dissonance thing, that I think if we start buying into these concepts, it's going to bury what I was talking about before as a very clear road to see that we are a bunch of abused, walking wounded that are acting out. That acting out is what we try to mollify when in fact we don't go after the harm within. These people that do not want Trump ostensibly do not want Trump, and they're acting in protest of it, which means this is not really cognitive dissonance. that we find out behind the scenes that this, for the media, that this was actually a planned offensive by the media against the condition, actually against even the notion of the people of the United States thinking they're voting, even given that much credit, because there's people that do. There's a reality. I don't discount the reality. I give it power because it's there, and it's not making that up. They were in a coup against the process. That is not cognitive dissonance. That they have to come out now and soft pedal their lie so they don't get fired and don't lose face, which they already have in millions, to the value of millions and millions of dollars and watch viewership and listenership. It is not a cognitive dissonance either. That's still fulfilling the plan and continuing in the game to be in the game. That I was really cautioned. I was cautioned. I saw this a magazine or whatever, a periodical publication, going out to ask trans people who aren't medically traditioned what they want people. I thought that was another abuse. That question is another abuse. That it exposes the abuse, which is a real abuse in my mind, that isn't going to be dealt with, actually, is, I think, our harm, that looking into the future of this, that people took on this election. I mean, for my part, I told you the unqualified one was someone we wanted to avoid. You didn't see me thinking that going out and protesting and breaking windows and lighting things on fire was going to change anything. When that happened, we had to suffer this guy for 8 years. And it wasn't like we weren't suffering before. But the point was that there's a different response to it. That the people that were into that, they wanted their Obama phone. They don't understand that Obamacare wasn't going to help them. They didn't care. It was being given something. They found a value in a place. Someone cared for them because they're ostensibly getting some gift. Is not a sound critical thought. But it is the reality of how people think. That in my Twitter feed, I had this response to this election. Not getting too psychological here, not a cognitive dissonance. These are people that feel apparently a true fear with the election of Trump. And worlds, folks, literally worlds are being crushed in their minds that they were speaking out. That I find this abuse, it's an abuse in us as a people, working its way out. As is said here, and I won't identify her, I'm sad and scared. This is because Hillary lost. I'm sad and scared. I want to be hopeful that America will be okay, but I'm really not sure. Time to go to work serving the American people. Without getting too deep on all that, this is someone is afraid. I do not discount the fact of that fear, but I believe, and this is an educated individual, I guess I'll say, supposedly thinking that the education is protecting them, that puts them on a bigger pedestal. And I say that through a context on watching the Twitter feed. And the groups of people that they're involved with believe they're on this pedestal, a protected pedestal that puts them above anybody else's thoughts. Those I've posed questions to will not answer me on simple questions. Like this is the idea where you start hearing someone speaking in absolutes. Everyone and everything, like another Twitter feed that came through aligning with this, that the people didn't understand how they were going to work. They were going to have to work out how they were going to work with people that voted against themselves, their family, and their friends when they voted for Trump. And I asked the question, how my research tells me, and this is another point I'll have to get to, but I'm going to jump the gun here to tell you. On this election coming in, I had lots of people coming in and said, I haven't voted for a long time, but I said, I always told myself, if Hillary Clinton ever ran for president, I would be voting against her. I would come out to make a vote against her. So I asked the question, and this is a universal conversation to me. This was not even Democrats or Republicans either, that people came out to vote against somebody. I asked, where my research shows they voted against Hillary, how is that again have anything to do with you, your family, or your friends? That you feel you have a problem with those people that voted for Trump? Is this real internal belief that there is a woe on the horizon for her and her family and her friends? But even though this is another woman now on the thing, not that she was a woman, but I really shouldn't, it's hard to, okay, so she makes a comment on her, in her bio, that she uses reason. She's a scientist. She uses reason to approach everything. But they would not answer my question, because I am really intrigued about how you take this everything and everyone approach to a response to something you see in a reality that's changed, that really hasn't really changed much at all, actually. That you respond so, I don't even know what the word is, so abruptly, that you feel you're attacked. Again, in my mind, is some harm and abuse that's happened to them, that there's a vulnerability, and it could be simply just the inculcation of all their training that does this. It could be that simple. But I found it very interesting. There's an abuse that found its way back out, and they're using this election to verbalize that. And I'm saddened to see it. I don't know why this guy that's been elected, and I'll get to my thanking this situation, because I told you it's going to give us an opportunity window. I'm grateful to that, absolutely. But to watch and see that all this is going to change overnight, that one man's going to do this overnight, is very interesting for all these people that believe they're trained and educated and think critically and think reasonably, that they thought that this government is so unstable and controlled by one guy, before he's even in office, that they would have evinced this terror in themselves, about themselves and their friends and their family. It is really showing me that we as a society of people are really in trouble. That we need to not look and worry about what other people are going to do against us. We need to find out what we're doing against ourselves. When we see the protesters being a paid off sedition, essentially, when you look at what this is about, it's okay to go and protest. It's not okay to riot, and it's certainly not okay to pay people to go riot. That's sedition. That's not being arrested anywhere is also telling you those metropolitan areas agree with the imposition of foreign international levels of insurrection. That people inside are, and I'm not going to discount any of it, they actually feel fear and other emotions, as we hear. That we start looking at the wrong things, that we displace all this onto one guy, we're going to miss the harm that we suffer as a society. One of the extensions of these Twitters went to something called Day One in Trump's America. And you'll get the links if you want to go review all this. And it was very troubling for me to see that overnight, people believe that because Trump went into office, because of his rhetoric, gave them license to attack other people, whether verbally or physically. That this listing in the Twitter was a compilation of a lot of the tweets that went out about people that were being attacked, typically ethnic people, by typically what they were referring to as white people, who said, go back where you came from now. As if Trump in office affects their legal status or their right to be here, or their actual American heritage here, their own status here. That I started to look at this, and when I kept looking and looking, and then I ran across this video of a guy who apparently, I don't remember his name now, maybe a guy named Wilcox or something, I don't know, has an accident in an intersection. Somebody hits his car, and the video that we see is a bunch of black people coming out and beating him up because someone alleges that he voted for Trump, and beat him down bad. And a whole bunch of people got in on it. That this showed me the polarization that's happening, but it's self-inflicted. The people themselves are doing this, not Trump. This is an evidence of a harm in us, an abuse in us, each one of us that do this. That it kind of balanced out in this sheet that shows what Trump's America looks like. That's not Trump's America. what I was, and I really am trying to gather some understanding by this. We have some trouble here, and as I've been trying to show, we have remedies, and no one's going to those remedies. They'd rather beat down on each other. They take licenses where licenses aren't given, and yet that was an improper imposition. My thoughts were an improper imposition. I'm thinking from a perspective, I would hope that's a society of actual law and reason and caring and empathy, that I am not looking at a society that can accept that when I see all these other evidences. And my response out of this page, and I just wanted to say this to get it out for people, because I think something's being missed here. Is this Trump's America? Or this was the suggestions that were underlying a silent problem, underlying this that's been festering like a boil, that Trump penetrated, that his election gave license to an effusion of response by people who, even though the identity politics says they're privileged, have not been, are not, they know they're not, and they have been controlled and regulated in silent ways to their harm as well, that they are incapable of giving any empathy. They want the pressure. They see this is a license for them to act out. And my question on the Twitter was, is this Trump's America or victims of prior regimes' identity politics oppression, feeling he's the only one stopping their abuse? Trump is the only one stopping their abuse. Are this a bunch of people that were oppressed by identity politics oppression that are now feeling free to respond to that oppression as a relief valve? If that's the case, we again have evidence that we as a society are in trouble if we don't focus on that. I'm pausing on purpose. I don't like dead air, but I'm pausing on purpose. We have to start thinking about this. This is a dynamic that it goes out of control really fast. And I think beyond, again, we talked about that civil war they were planning for us. We're going to do it to ourselves if we don't start understanding certain things. I don't agree with any of the violence that I see on either side. I don't know that any of it will answer the underlying problems I believe is actually causing the response. And this response is one of immaturity. It's one of lack of knowledge. It's one of coming from harm done prior that we either suppress or we live with because we just no one listens anyway, and why should we put our problems on someone else? I don't know what the answer is on all that. It's just that we're going to have to come to terms with that. I don't mean like sobbing on each other's shoulder. Some of these problems that we have that are harms to us may not be solvable more than to identify that they're there and just don't let them take us over as people and move to the next better day with our better action. Now this is back in my ballpark. Focus on some wrong you want to make right and fix it. But don't go after the effect. Go after the cause. And I suspect the cause is in you that causes the wrong effect. It causes even you to be quiet, to be silent against it, to not act against it, to believe, to make excuses that you listen to me and do nothing more, that's good enough. That I am out there trying to do what I think we're supposed to be doing is good enough. That's not good enough. When I looked at this, there's a sadness that came over me watching this sheet. As soon as I see all these people, the Haji, the Hibab, whatever, someone's religious garments being ripped off of them at knife point, name calling, I can't tell you how vile that is to me. And then I got corrected when I saw the other side doing the same thing to other people that were just as innocent, but in a different set of circumstances. To see that as a society we are in trouble if we allow this nonsense to blow up and blame it on Trump. Are these responses from victims of prior regimes of identity politics oppression? If so, we have a different type of work to do. And those of us that are responding out because of this have to check ourselves. And I think initially the first sentence, the first Twitter that I said, time to go to work serving the American people. Well, that's quite a big deal, serving all of the American people. How about you just do what you can do to make something right, and do it with a proper attitude? But my observation on that is where, in a way, maybe a little bit negative responding for me is, where have you been? I've been working for well over a couple decades trying to serve something beyond me. Why are you just now getting the cue? You're the educated one. But see, I really can't go too far with that. Its time is now for her. But I hope it's not in the wrong direction, that what she says serves America is going to be again from this fear that she feels and sadness. We literally have to diminish the harm that causes us to be sad in the face of our oppression, and rise above that and act. And that's not an easy thing, but I think we're able to do it. And I guess in small part. And I am not going to press my walking woundedness on anybody else's worse woundedness. But at some point I got wounded enough to say, okay, I'm going to stop this thing that's wounding us to here, but I'm not going to use my woundedness as the foundation to stop that harm that caused it. Is the things I talk to you behind the woodshed. Look outside of your own self and find objective basis to function from. And thank goodness for the black and white that becomes that objective basis, because if we're always looking from our subjective view, which we are, we will never be able to move forward, function properly, and get that better day we claim for ourselves in trying to solve the harm against us. Whether or not that harm can ever go away. I don't think it can. We're an interesting creature that way. We remember, we're like worse than an elephant in some regard. But whether or not we condition ourselves and respond like an elephant, we have this capacity to, if I can say it, rise above without sounding too something else. We can rise above in the right way, and we can act despite our woundedness. And just to point, hopefully in a short sentence here, my resolve to do that was finding a black and white objective basis on a subject matter that is equal to everybody, not equality, but equal to everybody, that is objective enough when you look at the black and white, that anybody coming to the subject matter could see that objective basis foundation from which we can all agree and stop the nonsense and stop all this backbiting, if it's that much, stop this continuing harm, and say, okay, well, let's start from here. Let's go back to here. Let's stay out of responding through our woundedness. And I say, we all have a woundedness. I know I have my own. I've told you Larkin Rose, the guy who was here right before me, he's definitely walking in his woundedness. Most people I talk to have a woundedness. And then there's an indignation against that. And the people I work with, I say, okay, let's not get lost in all that. Let's find out where we are. Where is our actual cause and effect to make it right, not to heap on and continue the clouding of what the cause is, which I will refer back to the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Zion is the first manual you read about your human frailty. You don't know what you don't know, and there's people out there that know that. And they know how to exploit all that. And you see it happening in all of these responses. A simple, interesting, just a fantastic response to this shows a lot, and it was a following up after all these other things I was talking about, was a bold man stands before anti-Trump brats holding sign with 3 perfect words. And the picture is pretty interesting. It means a lot to us, those of us that do something, about how few people it takes to control the mob of government, the mobs in government, the people that are the mobs outside the government that think they know about stuff. There's this one gentleman, young guy, and I was thrilled to see this too, standing on his curb across a boulevard of a highway, separating the mob, the protester mob, as described here, the anti-Trump brats. He is facing off their horde with all their signs with one sign. And his sign was, and you've heard me say it before, we're dealing in an immaturity. His sign said, "You're all crybabies." And he's holding that up against their horde, and they're all over on the other side of the street, not beating him up, not coming across the road, not doing anything. The separation is clear. It takes one having the proper perspective to make the notice. And they're silent again. Crickets, folks. It's just a pretty cool picture. His other sign was, and I didn't understand this till a little bit later as I was reading, his other statement, he did have another sign with 3 more words. It happened to be what these people across the mob, across the street, were using at the time Obama was elected, when they were telling the rest of us to get over it. And that's what his sign said, get over it. So the 2 signs, 6 words, with 3 words each. You're all crybabies, and get over it. It can mean typified a bit of this condition. We're immature, and you're going to have to get beyond that. And I don't know if he meant it this way, but again, the visual impact for me was pretty telling. One young man standing up with some, I felt, truth. This is a big immaturity being acted out. And if you're not, you're a mercenary for pay, and that's a sedition. It's a totally different condition. Exempling the right of free speech and the ability to do so. Being so resoundingly clear that it pushes back the mass was pretty neat to watch in a picture. Is what I'm kind of suggesting here. We're going to have to get back. We definitely have to get beyond any crybabiness. And that's not just about this election. I'm seeing some deep, deep wounds that aren't even in people that have actually suffered the real harm against us that I would think I have and others like me have. When you found out the system, like George Carlin said, threw you under the bus. As I told you before, when you find out that the United States of America isn't sovereign at all, it was a debtor to start with, and you go, what? Yeah, go read it. It says it right there. And everyone ignores it past that once they see it. Your civil rights are you to pay extortions of every kind and no other. What? Yeah, it's right there for you to read. That this nation wasn't set up as but as a lie. It was a system you were gave, and no one understood all this. I didn't. It took me all these decades to find this stuff out for myself, and I am convicted in it now. I look to the black and white. This is well beyond any woundedness. It sure explains why I got wounded, and I'm not talking about any physical abuse by my family or those I knew or my friends. None of that. This is finding out that the system is there to be the biggest abuser, and everything rolls from there. Fish rots from the head. People think the state's the head, and they start acting that out. And then they're only regulated by those that are in government that are the criminals, the epitome of the criminals, the caucustocracy that we're up against. That in this continuum of reaction, this is only 2 days in after the election now, folks. This is phenomenal how fast this uprising happens. It didn't happen before. But it's happening now, and we have international foreign ties to it. Even those that are inside the gate, that right after that happens, and again, in Portland is where I found my first feeds coming from the protests, and things were being broke already. Right after this, I think it was 2 days later or so, a news blurb from Oregon Live, another after Donald Trump victory, Oregonians submit ballot proposal to secede from the Union, actually beating California. If you didn't know, that this was an overall plan to do this, to destroy certain things. Now, we know that Lincoln kind of proved that that's not going to happen, but they're going to give you the idea anyway. But Oregonians, folks, I guess I'm certainly not an Oregonian, and I wouldn't have to claim that. I'm not a legal entity within that. I'm not a legal entity in that structure of 1953 Model Business Corporation Act. So this is going to be a privateer who advances this, and lo and behold, what'd you guess? So you go down and you start reading the story. The petition for this ballot measure has been withdrawn after overwhelming positive and negative responses. 2 days, this is an update. So the petition was withdrawn, but he came out anyway. So 2 days after Donald Trump was elected president of the United States, 2 Portlanders have submitted a petition for a 2018 ballot initiative to have Oregon secede from the United States. On Thursday morning, Jennifer Rollins, a lawyer, I'll end there, another bar member, was instrumental in planting the seed in your head that Portland should secede. I said this was Portlandia trying to declare itself a kingdom that is going to require the serfs of the countryside, all of the rest of Oregon, to feed it. Now, so it got withdrawn. As I just saw the update. I read it too soon. The point is, it was submitted by a bar member. What was interesting, why I wanted to go on, is what they said about this, which shows you the international connection, which I immediately realized I could go after this through our lawsuit and this bar member doing exactly what he did as a treason. Let me get to what he said, or she said, Jennifer Rollins. I was reading the other name. The other one was a writer called Christian Treball. But Jennifer goes on to say, this bar member, Oregonian values are no longer the values held by the rest of the United States, she declares. Those values, quote, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, plus equality. Did you get that? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is what she claims that the United States is no longer, I say the people of the United States, are no longer interested in. Those are not the values. Remember, values are an amenity-driven identity politics, valueless consideration. It's subjective as heck. Oregonian is a legal status. She's part of the system. She is the state. She's a member of the bar, which is an agency of that state, legislative branch, as well as advising the executive branch, as well as advising the legislative branch by its own members being in those seats, the legislative council of which gives them all the laws they're going to enact, the Bar Association judiciary, which is deciding whether or not they're right or not, or wrong. Now says that system doesn't believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness plus equality. Equality is one of the legs of the stool of the United Nations Sustainable Development. And when I saw the plus, the addition makes that treason, folks. Pretty simple to analyze. One little addition brings them from possibly, you have the right to propose it, of course. But the stupidity to do so is really is absent to begin with. Beyond that, the one-word addition, the two-word addition, the one word saying it is an addition to the prior organic documents of the government's responsibility, obligations, and duties to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which we understand as property as well. And if not, I can show you that the grants and obligations and duties of the government are to the land disposal grants, and they still impose themselves there. When they added equality, they brought in the international imposition, which is exactly what we've been fighting in Oregon. And it's in every state, but this is really obvious for us. We live here to see that. That our lawsuit, again in 2013, sued to enjoin this, that she comes out as an attorney to try and give you the idea that this is one of the reasons that we're going to continue to move. We're adding the concept of equality, identity politics, to law as a policy. Because when you read what the legislature is about, the legislature makes policy now. And so I just found this maybe people don't understand, maybe they're not interested. I found this really fantastic and to see how this rolls out as a plan. How it tries to fulfill the next step of the agenda, and all the crickets out there watching it in their bliss, or their sadness, or their scariness, or whatever, not paying attention to the fact that the rug is being pulled out from underneath them. How simple is it to identify that this is a non-constitutional imposition when they added plus equality? You mean civil rights wasn't enough? The exactions of every kind wasn't enough You're going to make it part of the government's right to do, which trumps, and I don't mean this in the see, you got now we can't even use another word, with trumps life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Do you realize that putting on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is actually saying it like it does, by putting equality on there, actually does what the Human Rights Declaration does. It puts your rights subject to the state as an extortion. And they're not bashful to come out to say all this. Is the underlying, see, they're getting to run underneath all this strife. They throw this stuff out on us, and they actually plant that this is a legitimate thing. And you go, what's wrong with that? You totally miss who did it, why they might have done it, when they did it, who's in charge right now that's already doing it. And I say that because we had to sue to stop it, and the criminals being like any other criminal in a bank robbery, and they're heading for the door, and you're standing there. You tell them, drop the gun, put the bag of money back, and go arrest yourself. What are and you're standing there by yourself. What are the likelihoods of you having that arrest happen and them not running out the bank and continuing to go rob another one? Is our condition right now where nobody wants to really pay attention to what I've been talking about, where we have to go with all this. Not in the way we see the protests, but under the objective basis that we call law, because without that we do have nothing. We have what they'll gave us and continue to give us. I say that particularly. You know why? We gave you a republic if you can keep it. So it's the right you've been gave. And then you didn't keep it. And then they wrested it from you in multiple layers. And now we're looking at today and we wonder why we have problems. And I look around and see everyone having the wrong answer. Everyone, and lots of people who have who sound intelligent really start to analyze it, really aren't so smart. They're just the walking wounded in response to the harm against them. And I don't want to get too deep in that. I really get irritated when I heard the broadcast before me. It won't be Ron Stevens. I'm talking to the stuff on Sunday. I realized just as I said that I play that broadcast will play right after Ron Stevens on UCY. So I forget about that. And thank you again for simulcasting this broadcast and pastcasting it. And thank you, Vince, for a new word, bringing it up. I'll just call it out. I think I heard you say these were prodcasts. I like that. Much better than podcasts. I don't live in a pod. They want to put me in a pod, but they want to put you in a pod. But prodcast, we want to prod you with our knowledge to do something. Prod you to a better understanding. And I thank Vince for his integration with all this and actually putting into practice these things. Again, he's got his neat little contribution he can make whenever he has a broadcast, and he's pulling it together better and better each broadcast to give you the information he's got. Those little tidbits, those little nuggets are sitting there for us to actually consider. That's what we're doing, aren't we? And then so those of us that are prodding you, hope, and we hope we do it gently enough, hope you work into your power. That's the only thing I can figure. You have to call this stuff out. You can't remain silent. You really can't be the crickets. They're taking every advantage. Because of Donald Trump, they believe they can openly secede from the union. What nonsense is this attorney, first of all? But when you understand these attorneys' relationship to your life, then you start to see the harm that they're actually doing. You'll appreciate that you can only find on the Justia site that we sued somebody but can't get the documents. And it happened to be these same people. This governor and this attorney general were put into office. One was continuing the office, and the attorney general was re-put into office. And these people are committing treason. That's not my opinion. That's not just some off looking around, oh, they're doing this because I say so. They agreed when they failed to answer our lawsuit that stated in one line that you're making war on the laws of the United States. They agreed to be committing high treason at the point they did not respond to that in law. So it's beyond, I don't even work, I kind of sit here without a thought more than just to repeat what the fact is. That these people are magicians. And the magistrate. It's all right here if we start really paying attention. These are, well, I won't go, there's a whole other discussion we can have. I'm not going to go there. Anyway, we have a bunch of people that are pulling the wool over our eyes and have pulled the wool over our eyes, have infiltrated and surrounded us. And it's not just the Bar Association, it is the political parties. And so, just addressing that, I want to thank whoever didn't waste your vote. As far as if you had a vote to waste, if you did vote for Donald Trump, on the most reluctant request from me to ask you for that, so that we might have a glimpse of being able to do something we think is the right thing, not by our opinion, but by what the black and white says needs to be done to make things work. Someone made a comment in the RLM chat last night. Well, the laws can't predict the future. I mean, can't work in the future, can they? And I said, absolutely they can. That's what a grant of disposal of land is. It's a grant that works into the future. Absolutely, the law dictates the future. If we didn't have that kind of a dictator, we wouldn't have property rights. And so there's a misunderstanding of how things work, and I see lots of people parroting. I was also told that this guy was guy, could have been a woman, was a troll, and that's possible. But I try to educate whoever I can by whatever question they might have. And the point, though, for me was to look and say, well, here's some more people. There's at least one more that goes around profusively discussing things that they don't truly understand. And it's not magic on our end, and it's not hopes and prayers and wishes. The only problem we have is not accountability to the people that sit in the seats of decision that are not accountable. Because if they're accountable to the black and white I read, certainly we haven't fixed every problem, but it works a whole lot more orderly. We have an expectation of peace. We have the expectation we can produce without governmental plunder. And then we have those that are inside the system that infiltrated that said, oh, why don't we try to secede? And we're going to do it to impose equality, which is a foreign imposition, not constitutional. Just like they warn their people, they do, these people, when they impose sustainable development. So, here's the proof. We didn't stop in enjoying this yet. We have a default judgment in law that ought to arrest it, but these people are criminals. And so we need help, I guess I can say it that way. And it's, just us getting involved and starting to figure out what we need to do for ourselves. And we have a foundation in law to do it. That it was just another example, that when you call out the problem, you're going to watch either that they continue it or come after you. This is the other silent cabal. This is another cause that allows the effects we see. We focus on trying to fix ameliorate the effects, and we don't realize who's the real ones pulling our chain. And then we realize, oh well, we do have a chain. Oh, and it's around my neck. And then we start getting mad at the chain. That's if we survive it. And an interesting little story popped up. Sad, again, all this stuff really sad to hear, but it's the reality. There's things working on the ground. There's deceptions everywhere. Man killed shortly after Facebook post expose. Excuse me. These titles really sometimes trip me up. Actually, what trips me up is I post them so long after I'm talking to them so long after I post them, I forget what the point is on how we're going to read, and the way they're mounted on the page is interrupted. But anyway, let's get back to the point. Man killed shortly after Facebook post expose fake medicine man. So whatever noble culture you think you belong to, there's the shysters within, and they'll dupe you. And this is not to point out anything. I want to actually move from this pretty quickly because it brings up a really interesting thing that I've been talking about. We talked about it before. Other people, I think, have now read the article. But as you read this, soon after coming forward and exposing what he called a fake, Todd Littlebull was shot and killed near Kyle after several posts on social media. The person Littlebull accused of allegedly holding ceremonies with fake spiritual experiences is Jerome LeBeau. Littlebull claimed he was asked to shake gourds, turn on small blue lights, and blow whistles during ceremonies. Sometime around midnight, August 2nd, Littlebull was killed, shortly after posting his voice message from a man named Jack Conroy. The message was left on Facebook Messenger, and Little Bull wrote, "One of many threats." This was posted on 11/36 on Monday, August 1st. A screenshot of the alleged threat to Little Bull from a man named Trey Vocu surfaced the day after the murder and was shared widely across Indian country. In this message, Vocu is alleged to have said that Little Bull, quote, "You gotta effing," I'll just do it that way, "crosshair on your head be Ach. You're F in the head and you're gonna get yours," and I'll stop there. It's on and on. To these alleged threats came a result of the Little Bull is coming forward with information he supposedly had regarding the illegitimate spiritual practices of Jerome LeBeau, a spiritual mentor whom Little Bull came from teaching him Lakota ceremonial ways. We can go on and read it. The point about this is he exposes a fake medicine man. Someone purporting to be real that people believed and wasn't. And I'm not focusing on the people of Indian country. I'm focusing on we're all people who are dupable. And there's medicine men that are fake. There's people that pass themselves off as medicine men, which was the point that I read this, came to my mind. And it may even say it somewhere. And why I'm even looking at it. That I want to remind you of an article I read a long time ago, and I think I've heard other people bring it up as well. It was written by Fred Rodell, a professor of law at Yale University. It was called "Woe Unto You Lawyers." Luke 11:52 will tell you all about that if we didn't know before. The book written a long time before all of us about the lawyers, the attorneys. His chapter 1 starts out with, and in regards to a man killed because he was exposing a fake medicine man, Rodell's first chapter states, "Modern medicine men." Modern medicine men. A quote by Charles Macklin, "The law is a sort of hocus-pocus science." Kind of like what I said before, science pocus, or even scientists. When we find out they're conservation scientists, they're actually not scientists more than they are lobbyists for a political position, which typically is to enforce and promote and prove biodiversity, or where rocks have more rights. Now, chimpanzees have the same rights as you, coming to a banana republic, the one you live in. Right? Reading from Rodell, in tribal times there were the medicine men. In the medieval ages there were the priests. Today there are the lawyers. For every age, a group of bright boys learned in their trade and jealous of their learning, who blend technical competence with plain and fancy hocus pocus to make themselves masters of their fellow men. For every age, a pseudo-intellectual autocracy guarding the tricks of its trade from the uninitiated and running, after its own pattern, the civilization of its day. If it is the lawyers who run our civilization for us, our governments, our business, our private lives, most legislators are lawyers. They make our laws. Most presidents, governors, commissioners, along with their advisors and brain trusters, are lawyers. They administer our laws. All the judges are lawyers. They interpret and enforce our laws. There is no separation of powers where the lawyers are concerned. There is only a concentration of all government power in the lawyers. After the schoolboy put it, ours is, quote, a government of lawyers, not men. What did I tell you about that Doubleday Dictionary defining the word race as the race of lawyers? This professor outs this whole thing. Now, I look at this now, many, decade, half a year, 70 years later or so, and I say, if you would have just put that into a lawsuit, you would have done what we did in 2013. We just did the same thing. There's nothing new, folks, and it's just who acts against it. He says right here exactly what I just told you. I find a different way. We allow the pseudo-intellectual to rule us. We take no steps against it. And I say this in generality. We took an initial step to lay the foundation for anyone else in this country to find out what we did and use it to move the position forward, or to help us continue to move this forward. that you're looking at a bunch of medicine men in our time. That when you out them, you're likely going to be attacked by them, shows you, as the gentleman with the tribal medicine man being a fake. At least his dying words saying that he turned on blue lights kind of says there was something not quite right there. Even if we don't have a conviction on the point. I don't know. I didn't follow that story up. The concept of medicine men came up, and the fact of their fraudulent nature, or they're apparently so. And at some point, when you start getting involved with some of that, you realize it is in you as well. But there are people that have a better insight that you can learn from in the spiritual ways, in the ways of the elders, the long lost knowledge, which is what multiculturalism destroys in us. In fact, a little bit. I got a little bit indignant listening to the Dakota thing here a little bit ago, talking about they get land, they get their reservations. Well, if we were all truly equal, no one would have a reservation. We would just have our land and we'd be productive from it. Why am I with all this? And I find out now I'm not even white. I'm not white enough. I didn't come from a special mountain over there in Europe at the right altitude or something. So this is all nonsense to begin with, and that's okay. I don't identify myself that way at all. But to some I'm white, to some I'm not, I guess. The point is, it's arbitrary and capricious that with all the white privilege I'm supposed to have, I don't have a reservation to call my own. I said, why is that being a privilegized? That should have been in fact, the treaties allowed for it, the neutralization of this specialty. But I told you why they did that. And it's not a nice thing. I don't like it, but that's the facts. And everyone can deny that or argue with me or turn the channel. I won't even mention it again. But there's certain realities when you settle down on the reality of the thing that you're looking at aren't so equal, aren't so right, that still continue, whether I agree with it or not. And a vote's not going to change that. That we have to take this battlefield as we see it, and we have to work for the better way. And I don't see anybody that's any much different than me that has any claim or higher claim to anything. We are each alone here. We come in here alone in a group of witnesses, and then we die, hopefully with maybe a few witnesses, and we're gone. We're done. It's over. What'd you do? What'd you step up for? Did you sneak out without doing anything? Is that the test, that we step up against the oppression? The oppression is here, that we have to step up against it. Our sin is not. That we have a bunch of people that are in places to dissuade us from doing such things. But they say, here, I'm going to put this in your face. Are you going to slap it away and then stop me from doing it again? Many people don't. That we're dealing in the age of the medicine man and in the object and of the attorney, and I would say also the legal entity, the corporation of the political parties. Do these people protesting against corporate control, do they realize, do they have any concept that what they're protesting is the very thing that they use to vote for their party member? Do they have any concept of this? And if they don't, I think we have something to work on. If they do, then they're hypocrites in the least, if not criminals. The legal profession, defining legal profession, just some stuff I'm finding to remind you. Defining the legal profession is more difficult than one might anticipate. It becomes apparent that the simplest definition is perhaps the most befitting. The legal profession is a vocation that is based on expertise in the law and in its application. Those who pursue these vocations collectively form a body of individuals who are qualified to practice law in particular jurisdictions. The learned occupation of these individuals is to study, promote, uphold, enforce the collection of rules imposed by the authority. They thus form a legal profession. Which jurisdiction, folks? This is just a legal entity. The aggregate body is just a legal entity. They've exalted themselves as a corporation. The members of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party and the Green Party and the Independent Party and the Constitutional Party, of which are corporate members, controlled by this group, because you can't exist unless you sign up for their stuff for protection. And if you think that's the only protection, then they've got you. What I've been trying to show, or I think I have shown it, whether or not people see what I'm saying, behind the woodshed, shows the chasm between what government is and what it can't do versus what they've established and installed around us all. That this is just a profession of medicine men that control your life, that the most of the parties of which in this election are, which is why there's not really much I can say about them. But the reality on the ground is, there's a reality on the ground. It functions. In January, as I asked Gerald Salente, who still hasn't answered me, what are we going, despite your position, despite the ability you think you can predict trends, despite your Occupy peace, there's going to be someone in this office. What do we do about that? There's no answer, right? So I'll tell you what we're going to do about that. We're going to do what we've been doing. Only, as I asked you, and whatever, however this fulfilled itself, pretty historic response. He didn't get the popular vote, but he got the electoral vote. And I'm not necessarily dissing the Electoral College and not even promoting it because he won. The problem, we have a problem in some of these, but these electoral colleges, which are not really functioning in the purpose they were in the beginning, do have a function. Again, the problem is that we've politicized our private lives, and we've allowed that politicization of our private lives and our property and our goings on. And there was supposed to be a chasm maintained. That we literally have been working. As I was looking at the election, Clinton, the thought occurred to me, well, if Clinton wins, I got nothing to do tonight. I just keep doing what we've been doing. We're on this slog. I told you I was condemned for 10 more years, at least, if I was going to live that long. We don't know. We don't know the time of the hour. No man knows the time, all that stuff. The ticker stops ticking. But at least while it's still going, if Clinton was going to be in, we're just going to status quo. I don't got nothing to do. And I realized that right when I said that, if Trump gets in, we got a lot of work to do. Why? Not because Trump's a good guy. In fact, people that came to me said, I'm voting against Hillary. She's so evil, I can't stand by to have her go in, because reality is someone's going to be in the seat of decision. And I know if I give it to anybody else than Trump, it gets thrown away. That's the reality. That I want to vote against her, and that, whether maybe how he got enough to get what he got where he got it, but the small window of opportunity we now have, and we have been working since the election, even though I hope folks don't understand this, he's not been elected yet. That doesn't happen until like December 19th or sometime, when the electors finally cast their ballots, which is what part of this protest, I think. They're trying to persuade the system. They're trying to get some electors to overthrow their vote against what the votes were in the states that can be overthrown. It's going to be quite a few electors that jump ship, but it's still possible. So those of you that think that Trump has won, actually, technically, that's not the case we won't know that until the count in December. That given that little potential glitch, which I really don't know has much ground, but it's there, the reality of it's there, we have been working already trying to get inroads to this administration building, which is kind of hectic because they're doing lots of work, going on lots of things, and we are trying to make our inroads. We have a couple of lines we're trying to fulfill, and I just want to thank you that we had to go back to work, because I don't know how it happened, but this guy, this unqualified one's out. We have a new guy that professed a whole lot of stuff, which I don't think actually comes to fruition, but because what we do behind the woods, what I do with my colleagues is exactly what Trump said he wanted to do. And it does it in a way that doesn't require new legislation or funding or anything like that. And that we can say that by the law, we can get people back to work and get the economy running a bit. Again, conditioned by the outer economy. We can get at least production going on. We can suggest highly that one of the he only had 28 things. The top 38 things top 30 things he should do in the first 100 days is reinstitute the law regarding production. We can actually prove out how we can get people to work. And it's not because I'm also altruistic, I want to get people to work. That's a byproduct of just getting the government officials to apply the law. How bad this is, that to let you know, I'm not excited more than it's a lot more work. We have an opportunity. It's the smallest chance that we're taking, opportunity we're working toward right now. And I guess the extended thing is, if you, so this is on the political side now, not on the law. We got to get people to recognize the law. If you know of how to get somebody to somebody we can talk to in the Trump organization in tight, I need to hear from you. We're trying real hard, and we're getting pretty close, but to my mind, it's a little too tenuous. I want a better connection. And so I'm asking you, and maybe my listenership is too small here, but we know the 6 degrees of distance between people, folks. I'm going to start to rely on that as well. The hope beyond hope, there's that. If you know somebody that'll get us into the Trump people, the right people, to be able to give them our information and fulfill what Trump promised regarding some jobs, and quite a bit, and economy stimulation. I think we have an objective answer on how that gets done that I would ask you to contact me, markonthebeast@yahoo.com, and somehow make that happen. If we can't find another way in, I'm looking for any way. Well, not any way, a way with integrity. And I guess it has to be qualified, because there's really no integrity in this whole thing. And despite my misgivings on all of this, the reality is there's something happening, folks. And I'm just saying you can be a part of that happening. And we couldn't do this before. We couldn't do this under Clinton. It wasn't going to happen. So I guess that's enough of my, just say thank you. Whether or not you even had to, thank you for whatever the intention was you put out there, because whatever happened, and we're here. And we've been working the last few days to try and make this thing work. It's maybe despite himself. I don't know. I don't know the man. I hear he's a pretty good guy as a guy, but I don't know what he's going to do. He's brought a whole lot of dirt around him already so quick that it's not that big a deal for us to consider. I'm looking at a very small part that I don't even think that they're even paying attention to, actually. That actually fulfills one or two of the things that this guy was promising that I think we can use to actually get it to go through. So I'm encouraged. Again, we're no guarantees, but a whole lot. I mean, it was a whole lot better. Kind of an interesting dichotomy that I'm happy that I have to roll up my sleeves and we have a whole lot more work to do. But when they simply move somebody out of the way and put somebody else in that the human, if I can call it, our people dynamic can now come into play. That's not the law, and we're not that connected. But if we can get the connection, I think we have a good opportunity here. So I think that for us it's pretty good. Otherwise, all the things I don't talk about, we done pretty good, folks. Where I'm at, around the area that I'm in, and not just me. It's just the information I can provide to people that are on the front line, that are getting the word out, doing broadcasts to get the public opinion out there of what the condition is we're under. Over the last 3 years, apparently worked to throw out all the opposition out of the offices during this election, at least in a local area. And we have now got elected people that are more conducive to an understanding of what the law is, that we were going to have better decisions being made when it goes into the government. That I'm telling you, this is a long-term battle. I don't have any tangible proof that we were successful. All I can tell you is the political offices are now occupied by people that aren't against us. And they've been listening to what we've been saying about how this thing works out. And they reiterate that back to us, which is even more important. They don't just listen and say, yeah. No, they understand how this thing works. And they're fortified to sit in the law because it also protects them, and they see how that works. And I say the law with regard to land disposal, the thing that gives you your water, the things that give you your land, the things that give you your travel, your highways, the thing that give you your property rights, evidence, the patents and other things. I'm only talking about the substance of our society here in a simple little mining law. And there's more things when you start looking at this. And we can get people, I can't say it's done. We just got them, and they're not even in the office yet. I can just tell you the political landscape over a lot of time working silently behind the scenes, education, and then overtly and outreach has made a change. We can only hope for its fulfillment. So, for those of us that kind of dismiss this thing, to my mind, it's the only thing we got. We either engage it or they engage it. I'll just say it that way. So, because this is what's happening. Another story coming out. What I deem to be the court of last resort. Again, this judiciary, this bar associations. You can't rely. There's no confidence now in this system, and I don't mean this is just a terse comment against the system, like because I'm against the system. There is no remedy. The court of no resort was what I talked about in a prior. Wanted to remind us here. These people, there's no remedy in the law to go after. So they're in the battlefield of reality that we're in. We have to get another way at this. Legislative or local is the way where you stay out of the courts. But shorthand, U.S. courts justices trade courtesy votes to maintain status quo was what we also have to be careful of and avoid. Again, the medicine men are in control, and it's never been about law. It's never been about giving law and justice a hearing at the courts of last resort. This is just admission that they will do courtesy votes. I'll scrub your back while you scrub mine. In this sexual identity political nonsense we live in, it gives a pretty seamy discussion going on there. But this is what's going on. We will trade what we think is justice. Now, my thought about that when I saw that they will give courtesy decisions. I don't know if you know this. When your complaint goes into the Supreme Court, they go through all these hearings. They look at all the substance of it. They get their aides due, and then they give reports to the judges, sit around and vote whether or not they're going to take the case. And more than likely, you get yours kicked out. Well, so when you get two sides and it's equal, and they got no real thing going on with who now Trump will be able to fill these positions. I'm not saying that's better. They're all a problem. But in this case, with the function of it, they've now got to the point where, since it's an equal measure, an equal vote on what cases go through and what they'll be deciding, at the end, they don't have anything there's no last resort they can make. So they're now giving courtesy votes. If you go this way on this case, I will go this way on that case. They do this negotiation. They can now, it's literally a minute order. They make a law in a minute order now. If you thought that was justice, there's a proof that you're delusional. If the court of last resort is a minute order between justices, why am I even going through the court system? It should just take a minute. What is this machinery now we see that's running? The big Rube Goldberg machine that does nothing but waste our time. Delay of justice is injustice by definition, and we tolerate it. Is another thing I want to point out and get back to you. We got a lot of work that once we get beyond our woundedness and we start really wanting to. I wish I had all those protesters with the proper mind, folks. I mean, there's just an army of people that we could actually tap, that we are, and we're not utilizing it in ourselves, and we'd rather be coming from our woundedness or using our woundedness as an excuse to do the cricket thing. It just amazes me too. I say that more and more the people are taught, just as an off conversation, they bring up the cricket. It's kind of amazing. It's kind of neat. I just don't know how far this broadcast actually goes to put things in people's minds. I just wish it would return to action. It's not what you do, not what you say, it's what you do. That was part of the disconnect in the conversation in the prior hour of, on Sunday, where one guy says, well, it's because of this condition, and then the other one adds the action, and they're opposing. You're just sitting there and doing nothing is not the action the other one suggested. You have to take an action. And the suggestion for the action wasn't even the right action in that interview. And so there's crickets. The response to that whole interview was crickets to people that are held up on a pedestal of knowing what's going on. It's troubling to me because I know that they're good people. It's not that I'm criticizing that part. But we're not being told really even the right thing, even though we think we're going after and trying to resolve for the right thing. This reminds me now of this whole thing about this injustice and this vote. We can now give a courtesy vote at the Supreme Court to decide cases in just a mere negotiation. You see the commercial nexus of all this, folks? It's just a negotiation. Your law that it turns out you think is justice is just a business deal. We move on, and I'm going to regurgitate a little bit of things that it does make me sick to talk about her, because I hope she's gone. Well, we'll see in December. But if Clinton was you or me, she'd be in prison. The Kaepernick interview with media is an old story, but I wanted to point out what happens. Again, this is what he was saying, and he got vilified a bit for this, and I really don't know his position on this. I don't know what kind of a thing he was actually talking about, but the statement is the truth. If you're not part of the medicine men cult, you will be treated different. If you're not part of any special interest group that sits in the seats of decision, you will be treated different, and people miss that. This is another wound in us. We responded to him instead of what his point was, and we responded in the wrong way. And I wanted to point out Clinton is a medicine woman. She's an attorney as well, but worse. She's the most evil woman, I think, on the planet at this point. If there's an eviler one, she's smarter or more intelligent because she hasn't popped her head up to let us know where she's at. That these people that you have seen kicked out should be in prison if they be us, is a true statement that we responded improperly to. The new ones coming in, I'm not promoting any of that. I don't see anything, and I know that's a pretty broad term, anything. I don't see anything going on right now that isn't the same, just with different people. What we are focusing on, myself and my colleagues, we are focusing on the glitch in that matrix, the crack in that porcelain, the door, the crack in the door that's been left in this moment of chaos that's going on in the transition. That's all we're looking at. Not because it's legitimate, not that it can be. Well, it'll be made legitimate by its acknowledgement, but it should have never been not legitimate in the fact of the implementation of the law. And we're simply getting that opportunity. So I mean, at that point, I am excited at that point. But just understand, I'm not raving. It's a lot of problems to get there because we have a big problem to solve. I think we can show some things to people. Again, listen, we got people working. Just even their slave jobs, we get people working. They're doing a whole lot better than looking for the next handout. So, that may still be a problem because then you're not still engaging the political harm against us, but I don't know how much better to approach this. See, I don't have all the answers. I just have observations that we're putting into action. And I just think about this, that we have a group of people that have refined itself to those that I'm working with is pretty cool to watch. It's still possible to pull this through, and hopefully we will be pulling this off. And you could be, again, anybody can help. Anybody could be doing this on their own point. We're taking an opportunity. I'm going to extend it to you. There is an opportunity to any one of you all who has a proper cause and the proper point to advance it as well. So don't just think that it's, look we got going. If you have something to say that makes something right, and this guy is the guy between you seeing it happen and not. This is the time for you to jump in right now. And I guess we're just hoping that the December is not a surprise in the Electoral College side, and it continues to be the new order of the same, but with these little opportunities. That wasn't going to happen with the attorney of Clinton. That wasn't going to happen with the attorney of Comey or Lynch. But that might be changing also with Trump, who, if I got it right, he's not an attorney. And look at the different idea he has. Not again to validate everything. You see him going wishy-washy. Again, this guy, it's so difficult to discuss this. I want to focus I am focused, and I just want you to know I'm focused on this opportunity. It's a very small hole in a crack in the porcelain. We're gonna seep through, I hope, and it's going to take some energy. And so I'm asking you for that help if you have it. If you know someone who knows someone, that's the political answer that we need right now. It's not about law. It's about contacts, the so-called networks, and hopefully within 6 degrees of anyone listening to me. Chinese official, and we're going back now to the reality, internationalization of the United States and the Banana Republic, which I think we are, We saw that in the coups, as I explained last week. And I told you a long time ago about Interpol being given the right to serve process in the country. We now see a potential problem. This is the same problem that the so-called liberals, these people that are protesting, have. When you gave unlimited power to Obama, and then he now isn't in, and you handed it to someone you didn't like, you now have that unlimited power handed to someone you didn't like. Now we have a problem, at least from your perspective, that we now see this in Interpol. Chinese official named head of Interpol, and it's drawing criticism. So the top Chinese police official was elected president of Interpol on Thursday, setting off alarm bells among rights advocates over abuses and the lack of transparency within China's legal system, as well as the potential misuse of police organized to attack Beijing's political opponents. Folks, I'm telling you, that guy has the power to come into your house and take you off the street. It's already law in the United States that the Interpol guy can do that. Rendition, remember all that? I talked about this NDAA stuff. I talked about all of this. Here's another nightmare on the surface here coming at us. You're not going to see the application. I'm telling you though that it works in the same capacity. I hope you didn't. Hope you find this important. I hope you didn't miss that. And if I've just told you and you didn't know hear about it till now, understand the international imposition on your life in a place that was supposed to have due process is not right now. This guy, Governor Christie, that Trump has been kind of playing on and off, and I don't know his real tie. It looked like it was just another pawn. But he said something a long time ago that he is being considered for parts and places in the administration. To me, all this looks as well. It's not even as good. It almost looks like second string B-movie players coming into these offices now that are still have major problems, as I can see. But he came out a long time ago. In August, I had this on. I'll come to it now. Dangerous precedent for free speech is a response to New Jersey Governor Chris Christie signs a law punishing boycotts of Israel. This is supposed to be a guy who's going to be put in the Trump administration. If you didn't see the signs of Trump's support of that place that isn't even actually a state with actual territory that's recognized in international law. Chris Christie has signed bipartisan-backed legislation. Bipartisan-backed legislation, folks. If you thought this was a one superior party, I'm telling you, you're missing it. You're missing our lawsuit. We sued to stop this treason against us. Has signed bipartisan-backed legislation that will punish groups that endorse a boycott of Israel in protest of its violations of Palestinian human rights. I don't even want to get into the politics, the nonsense of all this. I've talked about it in places before. Understand here, if you missed it, you punish groups. So you see, groups are considered legal entities that are subject to this corporate state, this legal entity state that the Bar Association works. And I think I could be wrong, but I think Christie is a Bar Association member as well. That his politics and this bipartisan politics will support a non-state, a non-country, internationally, I thought was a federal crime. But anyway, this guy's willing to do this. This guy is willing to step all over your First Amendment rights. So don't think I'm building that I'm gracious beyond our need with this guy Trump and who he has up around him. I mean, this is a predictable, as was shown, a guy named Kurt Nemo. I suppose he's well regarded. I suppose I don't know too much about him, but he made a documentation of on September 9th about this. Donald Trump, now a full-blown neocon. So I just want to point out the balance here. We have a reality. The reality is something that we are trying to engage on, something principled and reasoned to do real things in a system that's completely gone. And I don't know what else to do at that point. It's not working within the system. It's actually, it's like guiding a horse with reins. It's a little different process while we are trying to fill the seats of decision with people that are making better decisions. It's not a perfect system. But it's not also not supposed to be like you see some well-regarded dissenters in the so-called alternative people. I don't even know how to call them. I don't know. That's not. They're all the framework they build is way too constrained and not consistent with realities, and it doesn't really look. And the solutions are not reality. In fact, they're violative. They agree to take on things that are known to be failed in this new alternative view of what society ought to be. So much to say. But Donald Trump is now a full-blown neocon. Was shown back in September 9th before he was elected. So this is not going unnoticed, and it's not unnoticed behind the woodshed. It's just that there are certain realities, and we have to work within that. Otherwise, you do nothing, and to do nothing, it's just simple, folks. They win. I don't know what else to say, how simple that is. It's that simple. Now, let me move on into a different area, but one that came through the Twitters as well, and I'm not sure, maybe someone could advance me some evidence of this. I did not see where Trump, again, another problem, potential failure here, and I support one part of it but not the other, science. I do support our investigation of nature and our trying to figure it out, but that just comes from a position of our ignorance, and that's okay. We're trying to find out. I do not support the politicization of the science. However, these people that I see going through my Twitter feed are connected to, I think, the politicized science. However, and so they're terrified that Trump's going to take out the science funding. Now, I haven't heard that he's going to do that. So if anybody has that information, markonthebeast@yahoo.com. I'd like to just see whether or not he's stated that he was going to pull out the science and development and things like that. Funding that got me onto not only the failure that we might be cutting back on maybe good things, but that what we're funding is this ignorance in our own reality. When I ran across this paper that actually was printed out a long while back, but came to bear on this point, that the fear of pulling the funding for science together with the fact that the money that they're paying is being touted as going to something actual, when in fact there's a secret of science that says that it tries to say it knows. It's another medicine man, when in actuality it doesn't. It works on blue lights and whistles. We see that here and there, where we find a leaked NASA paper shows the impossible EM, electromagnetic drive, really does work. I don't know if you've been following this. It's a pretty interesting little device. You have to think in the terms of weightlessness, and the force it requires to drive something in weightlessness is when you get down into the amount of power this thing actually produces. But the point for me was that the NASA and science said this device was impossible. And yet the studies and the tests that they're doing and doing over again and over again are showing that this impossible EM drive, what science says is impossible, actually works. If Trump's going to take out this kind of science, that we start finding the impossible possible, I'm having a big problem about it. My point is that the science that's getting the money now, on large part, thinks this kind of stuff is impossible, is deluded. It thinks it puts more power and more authority in themselves. That I see now why these other scientists were in my Twitter feed being sad and disillusioned, and finally figuring out they're going to have to get involved to help the American people. We have to fund the right stuff. Another turn of a phrase. But this electromagnetic drive, it's a resonant chamber cavity that puts out electromagnetic energy that, in one regard, just by telling you that, I don't understand what the problem is. They say it defies certain laws, when in fact, if you know what standing waves are or electromagnetic repulsion and resonant cavities, and you have energy coming in and energy coming out, there's no law being violated on just the most basic view that science and its math can't describe why this works, and yet it does, is something I want us to focus on. Our science is so defective right now that I want my imagination to start running wild. I've said this before. You become the new inventor, the new scientist. Find out. I think I understand why this works. In fact, responding to guide you over to the dork table with Flash Toroid. I think he's in the chat room today in RLM. And Larry Woods is going through some of this stuff. He's talking about these things. Larry Woods has a certain coil he wants to design that does certain things. I got us into a great discussion in RLM chat last night about lots of these kinds of so-called esoteric type ideas, things that no one understands that everyone thinks to talk about. But I look at this EM drive. It didn't look impossible to me. But I didn't know. I knew it wouldn't be producing a ton of power like everyone thinks rockets. But they're now finding it does work. And I think I understand, at least on I could be wrong, but there's no one there to tell me or show me how, because everyone thinks this is impossible, how this cavity is expending energy that can act as a force to force a mass forward in weightless space, which will, when actually working, get us to the Mars in just a couple of months instead of years. So fascinating, cool things. It certainly doesn't have enough power to work on the ground, at least as I understand it. But let me consider this to be, if I can say it this way, this is the electromagnetic air blaster that we used to have as little kids. We have a black gun that we used to shoot the gorilla, the little tinsel that they made with the gorilla face painted on it. When it hung, you could see the gorilla, and you could go across the room and you could shoot a blast of air that went at a toroidal shape all the way across the room and blasted the little box. This is an electromagnetic version of that, I would suppose, with the cavity being the base and the pressure, which then the standing waves move out, which then are responded to by the electromagnetic pulsations in the frequency itself. So not resonance necessarily, but although it is in resonance, I'm saying we got to be careful not to jump too many things here. But the impossible is seen to not be, folks, is our delusion. Look past the noise, is I guess the bottom line I'm seeing here. Look into what people that do look past are doing. And this is maybe not so good, where they were saying that the women feminism, and this is the political feminism, was saying women power, we don't need males. Motherless babies possible as scientists create live offspring without the need for a female egg. If you think anybody was safe, you don't even need the egg now they got going here. This is in science. I think it's fascinating. It's scary as heck, though. But we shouldn't fool with Mother Nature in the least. Motherless babies, let me read that again. Motherless babies. If you don't think this one world genderless society, gender identity is not going to be fulfilled by this position right here, you're missing a big thing. This is technocracy at its finest. It's way fabulous, interesting knowledge that we've gained about life. But to go this far, and with the political problem we're seeing that science could be paying and fed to do, this is a scary future in my mind, and just something that we'd have to watch for and move against. The ethicists will be all over this to claim that they have guidelines, but then they'll just bring in the guidelines that they need to promote it. No different. I guess I should say this quickly before I forget. Those of you that are legalizing pot across the country, I hope you see the error of your ways, because that was one of the other election things that went on. A few more states legalize pot. It's the worst thing you could do. It's like registration of a gun, folks. Registration is confiscation. And what they do, we heard it the other day, last week. You register now to be a medical marijuana or recreational marijuana user, and the government can consider you to be defective enough to keep you from buying a gun or maybe possessing one. So they see what they gave you. They gave you this little thing over here. You plugged into that, and they stole something else from you. You have to decriminalize this stuff. And all you folks that are getting the mindset into the legalization, you need to come back in. And now that we see it's not a problem in our society, let's get rid of the oppression and the tax and the regulation. But they're setting you up for a fall. You aren't seeing it happening. Everybody, this is a big government swindle on you all for legalization, and your regulation is the destruction of your rights, because now you can be considered a status that's dangerous. And you thought that, they're recognizing it. No, I've told you this danger the entire time. It's the same thing with the GMOs. But get back to this story. Motherless babies, fabrication in a test tube, will not be possessed by the mother or father. Will it? It'll be possessed by the inventor of the creature that doesn't even need an egg now. Motherless babies could be on the horizon after scientists discovered a method of creating offspring without the need for a female egg. The landmark experiment by University of Bath rewrites Bath, a whole lot of symbology went right through my mind on that. Rewrites 200 years of biology teaching and could pave the way for a baby to be born from DNA of two men. Now, this was not taught up until now. Science had it wrong. We've existed in a realm of the medicine man of science that we're wrong, and they're changing the world around us faster than we can conceive of it. And this feeds right into the gender identity that they want to promote. And I was astonished to see how many people were in the gay parade at LA. Filled the streets for over, I don't know how, a mile or two. And if I look at that as an abuse, that saddens. I look at it as an abuse. That saddens me to areas I got to stop thinking about it. That we are looking at our destruction, and we don't even understand it. And for those of you that don't agree with my position, it's just my observation. You're just going to have to understand. I have no more information than to say it that way. I'm not intending any judgment. It's just the condition, and we're selling right into that. Science, why is science working in that direction also is kind of an interest to me, but it's something we didn't know before. The creation that you live in is completely discoverable by you. And in our country, a discovery means you got possession, remember? Just plant your flag. You stop whining about it, start planting your flag. Start doing things that are a lot better for us as people, not the system, not the technocrats. Because they invent stuff, and they invent stuff to keep you controlled, as I've been talking about. They keep your mind controlled. You're in a hive mind, and it's been inculcated to be that way. That they brought out something a long time ago. I want to get to it to show you there's more invention to keep you fearful. It's the war of terror on everyone. Crimean, and then this was interesting. They focused on Crimea, which is Russia, attack on Russia. This was an implied attack on Russia. Crimean Congo, hemorrhagic fever. New terrifying virus sweeps Europe, and there's no vaccine, was these headlines. First there was Zika, now it's Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever. But how much do we know about the disease sweeping across Europe? Was terrifying, folks. It's a war of terror. And then I have another lady in feed who just finally started reposting. She hasn't posted for over a year now. She finally came back, and she's telling us it's actually typhus that's going through Europe. And so that's late breaking to me. I didn't understand, but I think that's what they're showing here. And it's just what they did in the Hitler thing, where people were dying in the concentration camps, no matter how nicely they were contained, and then caused by the Allies bombing, they were causing in confinement of people in a way that typhus spread through the group and killed just tons of people. And there is no vaccine. You just have to go back to cleanliness and understand that this is the type of stuff they lead with, and they get your mind terrified, and you stop and you forget maybe there's something else, or maybe it's a lie, maybe it's made up. That I'm going to say maybe it's not made up, maybe it's typhus, and all y'all in Europe better start looking at that and solve typhus instead of listening to people like the WHO and these other global nonsense psychopaths. You'll get the link on. They've got a whole discussion on this, but who knows? Again, we don't know. We're kind of stuck, aren't we? So return local to where you are and continue the fight. Like I said, I appreciate what happened. We were able to put people in, convince. Some people were already ready to go. We were there to aid them in knowledge, and so now we have people in offices that have better knowledge, and I hope they make better decisions as we go. And we're seeing that to be a very formidable and working solution, I guess I can say it, at that level. So thank you for tuning in today. I hope I said something that'll help inspire you to do something, whatever. Just even look internal, fix the wounds we have, and don't respond from them. Thank you to Grimner, to reallibertymedia.com for the broadcaster site, the space, the archives, all the technical work you do. And with Bo Diddy over there at freedomsnetwork.com at the social network, you can go there and sign up, folks, and just engage. Pretty laid back place. Just don't be a phallic symbol in there, and we're fine. I suppose that's the rule. And Jules over at ucy.com, thank you for the simulcast and your support. And over at the terrestrial broadcasters. And folks, do you have anybody that has a slot open on Sundays for 2 hours or not? Even maybe they can make a special broadcast once a week. They can tie into my line. Just have them give me a contact. markonthebeast@yahoo.com. We can just keep spreading the word. I wish there was a lot more of it. I do wish I had more listenership, because I think I have some tools that really empower people. And so that's my only disappointment. It's just going to be longer with the least of us working. But it is working. So thank you again. I'll tune in next week if you can. I'm going to be here, tech, diss, and nature willing.